All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Tuesday, and I thought we had a really nice program yesterday with Arlen. Let me just adjust my microphone just a tiny bit there, folks. Sorry, I'm getting a bit, maybe a minute or two late. I actually attended a breakfast meeting with U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen, totally open to the public. It was like I got some special meeting with him. Oh, we hear my music? No, I don't think so. Anyway, Van Hollen was really good. You know, people make all sorts of assumptions about me, and I've been very critical of the Democratic Party and of Democratic leaders on this program. But I'm a pretty easy sell, to be perfectly honest with you. If you say what I want to hear, I'm pretty much going to be like, okay, yeah, I'm good with that. I like what you said there. That sounds plausible. And I'm kind of going to become a fanboy, maybe, especially if you're someone in power. I have to admit that. I'm not, I'm not really a grudge holder in general, although on times I can. Now, I really felt like Senator Van Hollen got it. And I got a lot of clips I'm going to play for you. My biggest beef with Van Hollen, and this is with all politicians, but especially Democratic, more so than Republican, they're so friggin' hyper-partisan. They just cannot criticize their own. They will not say there's something wrong with my party. And I pointed this out to Van Hollen after the meeting. He actually was kind of, pressing the flesh with constituents. And I said, a big issue here is that you all are unwilling to criticize your own party. And he just nodded. He wasn't going to really go there. But he did have some relatively, I wouldn't quite call them choice words, but pointed words directed at his, at the folks in the administration and at the folks running the campaign for Kamala Harris. All right, I see already a comment. Talk about Trump's appointments. I'm going to discuss that at the end of the program. Right now, my focus, I will discuss Stefanik, Rubio. I know there's some other issues you want me to talk about, recess appointments. I'm not going to really get into the recess appointments today. Van Hollen did mention those, but that's not going to be my focus. I will perhaps later in the program, or rather later this week in the program, talk about the effort to put people in the cabinet or just avoid cabinet approval altogether, by having people named as advisors rather than actual secretaries. So that is true. That is something that Trump's trying to do. Right now, we will start, as we do so often on Halitics, and tragically, we have no choice, the slaughtering, the pogroms, whatever word you want to use, is continuing unabated, unchecked in Gaza. So yesterday, Israeli strikes killed 31, another 31 killed in the past 24 hours. So there just does not appear to be any let up in what Israel's doing. And I got some comments from people about that too. Like, well, why aren't you calling out Trump? Why doesn't Trump do something about it? I'll address that in today's program as well. I want to respond to some of the comments in that vein, that somehow I'm being unfair to the Democrats by only singling them out rather than the president-elect for failing to rein Israel in, to stop Israel. Here's your count. As of midnight this morning, Israel and the Biden-Harris administration has killed more than 43,600 Gazans, and that includes 31 victims yesterday identified. And of course, we know the number's much higher. We also know the entire region of Gaza has been basically laid waste to. It's been razed. There's not a building standing. It looks worse than Germany did right as World War II was ending, and the Allies pounded the crap out of city after city, Berlin, Cologne, Dresden, obviously. Those cities were just absolutely, subject to incendiary attacks. Meaning, when I say incendiary, the bombing was so relentless that the whole cities were basically burst into flames. So that's what Israel has done with our weaponry to destroy an ethnic group. And that was with the full support, the backing of the Harris-Biden administration, not Trump, not Republicans, That was the two most powerful people in the planet, both Democrats. And I always hear people trying to make excuses. Well, she wasn't in charge. She wasn't in power. She didn't do it. Why are you blaming her? Because she said, I was in the room. I agreed with the decisions. I was dispatched, for example. I was given authority to engage with European leaders when it came to the Ukraine war, which has proven to be a complete disaster as well. So that's why, that's why I blame Harris. That simple. All right. Went to this event. Let's go there first. And I know I had said I wasn't going to focus as much on the post-mortem right now after yesterday's event, yesterday's Halitics with Arlen. But I'm not going to be focusing on it so much as my proxy guest. I want to thank Laura, hat tip to her, for videotaping this morning this breakfast discussion with Senator Van Hollen. I tried. I had trouble with my video apparatus. There's always tech problems if I'm involved, if I'm behind the camera. Shouldn't have been. I had everything set up correctly, but somehow just pressed the wrong button or something. Fortunately, somebody who's a little better with devices and with recording did handle it. So we've got a lot of footage. I cut through it. Maybe not all of it, but a good chunk. And we're going to go through it. Let's start with Van Hollen kind of trying to just explain a little bit, introducing his thoughts on what happened in the election. So here we go. Let's get that video up.
Pieces that really hurts most in this was the popular vote result. And so as you look around the country and you look at the states, what we're trying to do is really get a sense of what the voters were saying. And again, I'm not going to jump to any conclusions other than to say we need to look in the mirror. I don't believe this was just a tactical loss, right? If we had just done more, get out the vote. I think we saw a lot of get out the vote efforts. Many of you were in Pennsylvania. This was not a money issue. The Harris campaign had plenty of money. So I don't.
All right, I'm going to stop it there for a moment. I'm going to be doing a lot of interrupting because I've got a lot of clips here from Van Hollen, and as much as it would be valuable, I think, to just hear what he has to say, he's pretty verbose, so I cut him off in various places. So right there, he said it wasn't. Now remember, he's a Democrat. He's a partisan. He was, certainly supporting Harris completely behind her campaign. He's saying it's not money. She had enough money. That wasn't the factor. I know we've heard a lot of people saying it's the billionaires, it's the push from, the Elon Musk money. And he's saying, nope, we had the money. We had enough resources to compete on an even playing field. So that's not the problem, according to Senator Van Hollen.
I think we should sort of dismiss this in the category of tactical.
So he's saying it's not just tactics either. He's saying we can't just say, well, maybe we knocked on the wrong doors or we identified the wrong voters. It's not money. It's not tactics that cost the Democrats the White House, according to U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen.
I think we've got to really listen to what the voters were saying out there. Now.
All right, so he's saying, hey, listen, we got to figure out what the message was to us, because the message was voters aren't happy with Democrats. Voters preferred, in this election, by a significant margin, they clearly preferred Trump to our candidates. And I don't see that that's arguable. I really don't. I mean, I know a lot of people want it to be. I know a lot of people want to come up with other explanations, but Van Hollen's not having it. And I'm really glad that he did that. And he spoke to loyal, partisan, activist Democrats. It's important that the Democratic Party do this. This is why I said, as tough as I can be, as critical as I am of the Democrats, calling them genociders and the like, if they just throw me a bone every now and then, they almost pull me back in to the party, but not quite. All right, I want to get more from Van Hollen. Again, more video here that he's going to explain. Yeah, again, it's not money. So what is it? It wasn't money and it wasn't the tactics that the party embraced. So what, according to the senator, was the problem?
That the Democratic Party in this case got itself on the wrong end of the voters' perception of change.
So he's saying it was change. He said voters weren't happy, clearly.
As some were
Let me stop that. Voters weren't happy. They wanted change. So that's a big component. And he's going to talk about why. What were the issues that Democrats had, engaged in that caused the desire for change? But let's just hear a little more here.
It was inevitable, right? There's some people that say, oh, after all this, if you look at sort of the global trends, incumbents were always thrown out. And so we didn't have a chance as Democrats no matter what. That is, in my view, wishful. It is not.
Well, let me stop it. So he throws that argument out also. Oh, we couldn't help it. We're bucking trends. By the way, I'll say hi to everyone in the chat. I see you guys there. Thank you. I say guys, I think you're guys, but guys can be gender neutral, but good to see all of you there. And I did put up the link early. I did announce the show, the program. One of the people in the chat saying they didn't get the notice. I'm not sure about that. I'll look into that after the program, but it looks, I think I did everything right this morning. Surprise, surprise, I did everything right. So Van Hollen saying, no, yes, or he's saying, yes, it was change, but no, you can't just excuse us. That's what he even used the word wishful thinking. He's saying it's wishful of you, partisan Dems. It's wishful for the electeds. It's wishful, certainly for the consulting class that we paid all this money to believe that there was nothing we could do. We were bucking trends that made it impossible. And he's saying, no, that's not the reason either. So let's continue just a little more. Well, this video is a little bit long. We'll keep going. There we go.
An explanation that we should adopt. And I don't think it's true. I think that we need to look at a lot at our economic policies. We need to look at, so it's not just a matter of delivery either, although I do think how we talk about issues we care about matters. One of the things we have been seeing coming out of these sort of focus groups and discussions have been,
All right, so let me just stop it. I'll jump. I'm going to jump forward in this section, and I'm going to get to my question, and there's some more too. It won't be all Van Hollen, but I think it's very instructive for those of you who are looking for excuses or explanations that don't specifically, lay the blame for Trump's election at the feet of the Democrats. Van Hollen's not having any of that. He's like, nope. And he just said there, it's not just messaging. People won't say, well, it's messaging. No, yes, he says, and he's going to continue at this part, but I'm not going to play it. There's no need. But he's going to say, yeah, there are times when we don't listen. We're not good listeners. He says, we hear that we don't take into account what people who may disagree with us have to say. But it's not just messaging. It's not just listening. We have to do better. He flat out says that. And if you want to stop MAGA, if that's your biggest goal, right? And that's not mine. I mean, yeah, I don't like what they're doing, but my goals go well beyond just sort of getting rid of the new old boss, right? Because he was the old boss. He's going to be the new boss. My goal isn't just getting rid of the new old boss. It's getting rid of the bosses altogether and having a people-centered government, and one that focuses on guaranteeing all enough and no one too much. And if you want that, then you can't embrace the kinds of policies and the kinds of strategy, political strategy, tactics, what have you, that the Democrats do. And to be very fair to Chris Van Hollen, he's saying the same thing. So yes, I was pleased. I was very pleased with this. And let's get to what he does is he asks folks to give our view on why this happened. By the way, I'm getting a caller. I'm going to take the call in just a moment. Thank you so much, caller, for joining me. We'll take you in just a moment. Before I get to the caller, I just want to say this, and then we'll go to the caller, then we'll hear my question. Van Hollen asked the people at this meeting, maybe 50, 60 people, what we thought was the cause, what we thought led to Trump's win. And I answer that I answer that question that he gave to us. Many other people asked him questions, and I thought that was the far less interesting aspect of the program, because he was speculating. He doesn't really know what Trump's going to do. He doesn't know how best to try to stop Trump. But we'll get into that a little bit after we play through the clips I took from Van Hollen meeting. Let's get to the caller. Caller, I've got you. Who is this? Hello? Do I have you, caller? I think you should be on. Okay, well, I guess not. Oh, go ahead.
Earlier today, I want you to answer my question. Why was your support of Gaza so critical to costing your vote for Harris and not the imminent concern of Trump potentially and now have reclaiming the presidency and intending to repeat the atrocities of January 6th and the atrocities of his previous administration? How is that not one of your major concerns right now?
Okay, so the audio is a little clip from you, caller, but I think I got the gist of your question, and I'll let you respond to what I say in case I didn't fully answer or didn't answer to your satisfaction, which I'm sure I won't. Trump is not in power right now. Harris, Biden are in power. They're still. So I had to mute this caller because they cursed, and even though I don't actually, we're not on the radio, so we're not in a situation where I can get in trouble for the cursing. I won't countenance that. So it's very unfortunate. This is what we get, is we get people who are so angry, and they're kind of unhinged. And that's what you're getting here, kind of a complete refusal to acknowledge what the Democrats have done, and only a focus 100% on what they fear the other side will do. And it's sad, because we can't solve our problems that way. But that's what you got. But caller, listen, I'd love to have you back on. It's not like you're banned or anything like that. I don't know if you've even hung up. You may still be there. I don't think so. But don't curse. That's just not going to happen. And if you do, and I know it squeaked through. I might go back and edit that out, but probably not. All right, let's get to, that was so unfortunate, wasn't it? We can't have a debate, a discussion, because the point the caller was making was that, hey, Trump's going to be even worse. So what's the matter with you that you would vote for? Well, I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Jill Stein. That's why. Well, first of all, we don't know that Trump's going to be worse. So that's point one. Second of all, can you really be worse? Third, the Palestinian people who vote in our country, who are Palestinian Americans and the like, they don't think that Trump will necessarily be worse. We got the same caller back. I'm going to have to block the. All right, I'll tell you what, caller. I can hear you, but no one else can. If you curse again or anything like that, I'll block you. But I'm going to give you one more opportunity to have a civil conversation. And I'm going to answer your question. I started to answer it. I don't think you can be worse than supporting fully, without any reservations or unwaveringly, genocide. I also note that the Palestinian Americans who voted did not support Harris. They actually voted for Trump. So do you want to respond to those points? And I've got you on a super short leash. I've got the red button, my clicker right over it. So if you curse at me, I will drop you. But you can respond, because I do absolutely believe in a dialogue, in a respectful conversation. Go ahead.
Okay. You're saying that you are concerned about Palestine. You are saying you're concerned about the people of Gaza. You are saying you are concerned for all of this. And yet you voted for Jill Stein, who has no say over anything. She was never going to win. We all know this. This is not just me talking. This is a fact of the matter.
Well, what other choice did I have, caller? Who else was I going to vote for? Because Harris has made it clear she's unwaveringly in support of Israel, and we've seen Israel expand. And wait, let me finish, and then you'll get right back on. I'm not going to keep you from speaking. And now, when during the lame duck session, when Harris Biden actually could act without any fear, because one of their arguments would have been, well, if we support Palestine, if we stop the flow of arms to Israel, then we could lose the Jewish vote. I don't think that was a fair answer, but okay, all right, I'll accept that for then. Now there's no fear of losing the Jewish vote. The election's over. Why haven't they stopped the killing now? Why haven't they stopped our support for the killing now? Go ahead.
Because there are a million other things going on in the region. It is the Middle East. You have the interest of Russia. You have the interest of China. You have the interest of everyone involved in the Red Sea trade.
Okay, you sound so upset. Why are you so upset that Trump is going to be president? What are you afraid of? It seems like we're not going to come to any agreement on this. So maybe you can explain what you think is so horrible about Trump versus, and going to be so much worse than having Harris as president.
Okay, so I'll tell you. He and his associates have promised to level Gaza. They have made this fact known to everyone.
Okay, so they're already leveled. It's leveled already. I mean, caller, it's already done. It's gone.
I am not saying Harris is perfect or ever will be perfect. I'm not saying Biden is perfect. What I'm trying to tell you is that voting for Jill Stein, a third party, when the two major parties that do work in the U.S. are Republican and Democrat, accomplishes nothing. You cannot create a future where you are just voting for third party and you are not, and the one issue that you do care about, you said, oh, I'm not going to vote for Democrats. I'm not going to do that because this one issue I care about isn't being taken care of enough. You have to vote in order to vote for Democrats so that in the future, the far off future, something good will be done.
Okay, so I heard that. I do. And I want to thank you for calling. I'm not going to drop you yet because I think there's a lot to this, and I always think dialogue is best. I agree with you that it's very far from ideal to vote for a candidate who gets less than 1% of the vote, which was foreseeable. I agree with you. But there were no issues that I felt really comfortable with Harris. It's not just Gaza, but I will not. That is a red line for me. It's a litmus test. I'm not going to vote for a genocider. So that was point one. I don't accept the argument that Trump will necessarily be worse, because I don't know that you could really be worse. And the signs we're seeing right now don't suggest he necessarily will be worse. But I'm not going to vote for a genocider. But there are many, many other issues, and I disliked Harris on every single, or virtually every single one. Even where I didn't totally disagree with her, she didn't go nearly far enough, certainly not on economic issues. And that, by the way, is not just my view. That's not just the view of the millions of white blue-collar voters who didn't support her, but it's even the view of Senator Van Hollen. And if you listen to, now, of course, he still voted for her, but he also believed that the Democratic economic message was insufficient given the scope of the challenges we face. And finally, I'll say, you're talking about the future. I agree. We need to focus on the future, but I don't believe there will be any future for our children or grandchildren if either of the two corporate-backed parties remain in complete control. We may not be able to defeat them, but only if we defeat them will there be a future. That's why I do this program, to try to rally folks behind an alternative, an emerging party. Go ahead, please respond, sir. Oh, I think we lost them. Okay, well, I apologize. I did use a male term there, and I believe the caller is male, also based on some of the commentary in the chat. Listen, caller, thank you so much. I hope you won't be a stranger, and I'm glad we were able, we were able to connect without the vitriol. And I do, by the way, hear your pain. I really, really get it. I know people are very, very upset about this election result. No question about it. All right, let me play the clip. Here I am talking to Senator Van Hollen. Let's see if I can get that up for you.
Thanks, Chris. Here are my first.
Just going to stop it for 1 sec. Mute myself, mute my video here, and get you that because I got to get myself back. All right, here we go. Hal talking to Senator Van Hollen.
First of all, the support, the unwavering support for Israel and its eradication of Gaza was a huge problem. That's why I didn't vote for Harris. That's also, well, that's what I asked for, right? Am I right?
Okay, so let me just interrupt myself in being interrupted. So when we started the question and answer, Van Hollen specifically said, I want to hear from you why you think the Democrats lost. And that was exactly what you just heard me say. Well, I'll start with myself. I said Gaza. The host of the event, who did a tremendous job, and I want to give her all props. I sent her a thank you afterwards. We talked afterwards. She said to me, you're not supposed to give a speech. You're not supposed to pontificate. Just give a question. And then I said to her, I pushed back quickly because I wanted to get this done. I said, no. He, meaning Senator Van Hollen, had asked us for our thoughts. And then she backed away and she was like, you're right. You're right. So you'll see I'm very quick in my answer, or what I said. So the first thing I explained was my vote was I wasn't going to vote for her because of Gaza. And then I continue.
The senator asked for this, so I want to make this point. This probably cost you Michigan. Also, we have the most unequal society we've ever had, and the Democrats have made it worse. There are so many other explanations, but those are two huge ones. I'd like you to comment on those. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so just real quick, I just gave the two reasons, my two biggest reasons. I don't think Gaza, and you'll hear him respond very, very at length, but I just he'll respond to the 2 points I made: economics and specifically inequality and Gaza. So let's listen to the senator.
So I'm not going to make it always super short, but I will do my best. I'm going to start with the economy and say, first of all, I agree. There are two things that I think need to happen. One is if you look at the Biden legislation and what it did, it actually was very forward-leaning in trying to get more funds to community levels to support jobs and working people. And unfortunately, a lot of that is still in the pipeline. It doesn't mean it hasn't been committed, but it's still in the pipeline. People have not felt the full effects of that. That said, I'm a believer that we, the Democrats, all along, should also be looking at deeper economic issues, because the reality is, despite these pieces of legislation that have passed.
All right, so he's very long-winded. It's unfortunate. And in fact, what's kind of amazing is the host of the meeting interrupted him a couple of times and said, you got to go faster. You got to shorten your answers. She says to a sitting U.S. senator, we love you, Chris, but you got to move along. And I was pretty impressed she did that. I've done that too when I've hosted electeds, because some of them just will not shut up. They just are so in love with their own voice. People say that about me too. I'm sure it's true, but hey, this was his time. My question took me 30 seconds to ask, and he took several minutes to respond. But he did say, you got a good point. I mean, he was, with regards to the economics, he goes, yeah, we tried to do some things, but they were backloaded, so a lot of the benefits didn't come in, and then they were weakened by, the Senate process. So yeah, he's saying, yeah, you're right, Hal. Before we get to more Van Hollen, I'll play a little more of his answer to the economic issue and then get to him on Gaza, because I thought it was very, very interesting what he said about Gaza. But I just want to comment on one thing in the chat, because you guys said to me, hey, read the chat. Don't just ignore us in the chat. So I'm going to really make that effort. It's hard. It was harder with Garland. It was harder, not Merrick Garland. It was harder, or Garland Nixon either. It was harder. It's harder for me to look at the chat when I've got Arlen as well. So if it's no Arlen, I can do the chat a little more easily. So there's a comment there about genocide being the non-decisive factor. That's what Van Hollen says too, and you'll hear him say it. So I don't need to comment beyond that. But hell is much more fairer Yes, I am much more fair to angry callers than Tom Hartman. Well, I try to be. There's a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I get fewer callers than Tom Hartman, so he can just get rid of somebody. He knows there's going to be a second or third and fourth or fifth caller. So that's like, an advantage that he has that I don't have. So I feel the need for my own programming to have, more calls. And one way you get them is to hear them out. But that's also true for another reason. And Hartman, by the way, when he knows it's me calling, he won't put me on because I always challenge him, and I challenge him on facts, and I challenge him on logic, and he doesn't like it, so he won't put me on. With regard to the caller we just had, I think it's valuable to talk to people who disagree with you, even when they're angry, to listen to them, to hear them out. Not when they curse, it ruins you can't do that. But that's how we learn from each other. I also want to convert people. I'm not wanting to preach to the choir at all. What good does that do? That's what the Democrats did this entire election season, demonizing Trump, trying to, they didn't, their outreach was also to the totally wrong people. The suburban, affluent folks. They made no effort to reach blue-collar voters, and that's what cost them the election. It's just that simple. All right, here's more from Van Hollen.
The reality is the wealth gap in the United States continues to grow. Income gaps continue to grow. There are structural issues.
That was just somebody pouring some coffee.
I'm co-sponsoring and have legislation on that, but, I will remind people, we had a 50-50. When we passed these things, we had a 50-50 Senate. And there are things that we wanted to do, including me, that would have addressed some of these other issues in terms of the economy. For example, housing costs being one.
All right, so he's going to go on and list a few things and kind of making excuses. Oh, we wanted to do this and we want to do that. We don't have enough people. But he's real honest about it too. He says, hey, but the bottom line is we didn't do enough, and our plans didn't have enough in them. And I, again, I really give Van Hollen a lot of credit. All right, let me see if I can get to this section because we only have so much time, and I don't want to belabor it. But let's see. I'm going to jump ahead to the section where he responds to my points about Gaza.
In my view, he hasn't. That is a different statement than to say that this was a big issue in the election.
All right, so he's saying there, let me just go back a little bit. He said, when Van Hollen said, I'll just explain it. He said that Van Hollen said, hey, Bibi just played Biden, that Biden would call Bibi and ask him not to do this, or plead him not to do this, and then Bibi would just play him, and it didn't matter, and there were no consequences. And Van Hollen says it's wrong. He said, I tried to do something about it, which is true. He pushed legislation. I don't think he did enough, but he did try. He's like, yeah, this is a real issue. No question about it. And then he's going to talk about the impact on the election. So let's listen to that. This goes to the point that the genocide vote wasn't, that comment here, genocide vote wasn't dispositive. Well, Van Hollen agrees with you to a point. Let's hear his answer.
That is a different statement than to say that this was a big issue in the election. I think that is, you can point to certain, there no doubt there's certain places you can point to where that was true, certain congressional districts, certain parts of Michigan, for example. But obviously the Democrats lost this.
All right, I'm just going to show my head here because the video is herky-jerky there. So we'll just listen to Van Hollen, and he's saying, yeah, he doesn't think it necessarily cost the Gaza, the failure to address the Israeli genocide. Van Hollen decries that. He's critical of it, but he doesn't think it cost the Dems the election, which is what Emogi says in the chat. Let's hear some more from Van Hollen.
If you ascribe some of Michigan to that, and I don't, I think it was big enough. But whatever. If you look at Pennsylvania and other places, I do think when it comes to younger voters, this is understandably a big issue. To what extent it was a factor in lower turnout among young people, and the fact that Harris got a much lower share of younger voters this time than Biden did in 2020. So, there are a mix of issues there. Obviously, cost of housing. There's lots of issues, but it's very possible that Gaza was part of that. But again, this was an election where, Harris lost in terms of every group. And so I don't ascribe any one particular issue, like that to the loss. But I do think we have an atmosphere here that Trump was able to paint it as you weren't happy with the economy at home, and we do have these two wars, which Donald. If you talk to folks in the Biden administration, they thought they were going to end the war in Gaza in January.
All right, so I'll stop it there. But basically, Van Hollen's saying the same things I've been saying. Not quite as in pointed a fashion, not making as, harshly critical judgment, not willing to break with his party, which I wish he would. But yeah, there's a similar analysis. Now, I want to make one last point about this, and we'll get to a few, maybe one or two more clips. I've got more clips there, but I don't want to, at some point, it's enough. It's enough, Chris Van Hollen. But I think if he had run, and I'm going to put this out to callers, if you want to join me, I really have this question for you. Do you think, based on just what you've seen and heard just now, and also if you know anything about Senator Van Hollen, do you think he would have won? If he had been the Democratic nominee, would he have been able to defeat Donald Trump in this election? I'm going to answer my own question and say I think probably. No, not definitely. There are, as Van Hollen himself said, structural factors. But he's so much more plain spoken than Harris. He addresses issues directly. He would have been so much better on Gaza, and with real conviction. He would have been able to speak with conviction against our supporting the Holocaust there. So I do think that yes, he probably would have beaten Trump. We'll never know. I'd like to know what you think. 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. Maybe we don't need to hear more Van Hollen. We'll see. This was a comment that I saw in the chat of the live stream that was, posted of Van Hollen, right? So this isn't my live stream, but this was what one of the commenters who was watching the breakfast meeting online had to say in response to the various explanations put forth. And then he's like, I agree. And then there's a name, because I don't out anybody, but they're agreeing with what someone else said. I don't know quite what the other person, I guess what someone else said during the meeting. I'm not sure what it was. And then they go on to say, what I'm not hearing is anything about racism and misogyny. It wasn't about the price of eggs. So this is where I just think you can't really have a dialogue. We don't know. We don't know how many people said, I'm not going to vote for a black woman or a Blasian woman. We do know that well over 50% of Americans voted for an African-American man, mixed race ancestry, father Kenyan. We know he was able to win re-election easily. We know his wife is who's a darker skinned black woman. We know his wife was able to win or is one of the most popular people in America. We know that Oprah is an incredibly successful entertainer who's beloved. So that doesn't mean anything, that doesn't prove anything. But it does say, I think especially Barack Obama, that Americans, white Americans, will vote for people of color, will vote for African Americans. So I think that argument is weakened by that reality. I also think the argument is weakened by the fact that the people of color vote, oh, sorry about that, folks. The people of color vote has been slowly, it's been moving away from the Democrats. And it moved away from the Democrats in this most recent election very significantly. So I mean, to say that it was racism, you have to explain why more than half of Latinos, many of whom, by the way, are African Latino, Black Latino, however you want to call it, mixed race Latino. You have to explain that. And so and finally, if you want to blame it on racism and sexism, then you end the conversation. Then you insulate your candidate from criticism. And I don't think any of that is useful. I don't think any of that is helpful. It's not what voters said. I posted on Facebook. I was trying to get the clip up just now. Couldn't find it where I posted, where I spoke to an Afro or African Latino, African American, Black Latino. I don't know what the right term is. I'm doing my best here, folks. Black Latino man who at a bar, he's a bartender at a place where I frequent, very intelligent from this area. And I asked him, well, first of all, he didn't vote. He didn't vote for Harris. He voted for Jill Stein. I don't know if I talked about this. I don't think I've talked about this. It's in the Facebook page. By the way, Halitics on Facebook. Go to Halitics on Facebook. Post there. Comment there. Love to hear from you there. And so the man I'm talking about said, yeah, I was thinking of voting for Harris. My dad voted for Trump. So his dad, I'm not certain the race or the ethnicity or what have you, but again, the bartender is Black Latino. I'm sure there's mixed race. Who knows? His dad voted for Trump. His dad's a huge Trump supporter, voted for Obama, but then moved away from Obama, didn't think Obama had the right policies. The son said, I can't vote for Trump, even though my dad says I should. I'm going to vote for Harris because I can't deal with Trump again. And then he said, couldn't do it. Went into the voting booth, voted for Jill Stein. And I asked him, I said, you think it's racism? You know, do you think the reason that Harris lost is racism? He said, it's a lazy answer. It's a lazy answer. It's like, I'm not going to look at the real reasons. I'm going to come up with something. It's not misogyny or racism. It's factors. People don't like the Democrats. They don't trust the Democrats. So there's your answer. All right, let me move on because I have so much more from Van Hollen I could get to. Well, maybe we should. Just a couple of quick. I won't even play the clips. I played enough, but I'd like to hear from you. The question, would Chris Van Hollen have beaten Trump? And my tentative, uncertain answer with very little degree of certainty is yeah, probably yes. I think he would have. We'll never know. All right, let me get to, we had people saying to me, talk about the Greens. I was at a meeting. It wasn't Green Party. It was Workers Strike Back, which is Shama Sawant. She is a Green Party adjacent individual. She worked with the Seattle. She was on the Seattle City Council for a while. She was as a socialist, Worker Socialist Party, and now she's created this group, Workers Strike Back. And her goal is definitely political change, supporting workers. She also has endorsed Green Party candidates, and she supports the Green Party. Unless I guess there's another candidate that she also likes. So I'm at this meeting, Workers Strike Back. The goal is to build a powerful movement of workers. And I completely support that. That's why I went. I wanted to hear from them. I liked what they said. I had agreement with it. I fear, just like our earlier caller, that, who called me out for supporting a party that doesn't get 1% of the vote, that I'm not sure that's going to change. I don't know how. I didn't get the sense that there was a real critical mass. This was not a meeting in person. This was a Zoom meeting. And this was the first thing I saw. And I'm like, whoa, what have we learned? Nothing. So a group that's trying to appeal to workers, to build a working class movement. And when you join the Zoom, you're asked to include your pronouns. I mean, why? How You talk about shooting yourself in the foot. This is designed to make this organization look elitist and out of touch. And that's exactly what it did. Now, if you say, well, Hal, I think pronouns are really important. And I want us to express solidarity with the trans community and the non-binary community. And the way I do that is by including my pronouns. If that's what you say to me, I'm going to say to you, then include them. That's fine. Go ahead. No one's going to stop you. But don't ask me at a meeting, and not even me, don't ask workers, working class people, people from Latino backgrounds, people from, much different, whose concern is far, far more serious from their standpoint than being misgendered. Their concern are having enough to eat. Their concern is getting paid a decent wage, enough so that they can pay the rent every month with some comfort, and still be able to save a little bit of money at the end of a year, have a little bit saved up at the end of the year. That's what working people are worried about in our country. And when you have a meeting and the first thing you ask people to do is include their pronouns, then that's a guaranteed recipe for failure. I just make one more point. Virtually no one put their pronouns. There were a couple who did. Shama Sawant did not. So this was her meeting. This was her group, Workers Strike Back. If were I she, I would tell my, tech folks, my Zoom people, don't do that. Just don't do that. I tried, at our revolution, I said, don't do that. I remember we had this discussion when I was an organizer there. I said, you know what? You want to put your pronouns, put them. Just don't ask people to. I even said, instead of asking people to, even if I said, I wouldn't put it, I wouldn't note it, I wouldn't mention it. But if you're going to mention it, then say something like, you are welcome to put pronouns if you want, if that's important to you, or something to that nature. And I was pushed down. I was like, no, we've got to show solidarity. Well, that's the argument, right? People say to me, oh, well, Hal, you basically voted for Trump, and he's going to be even worse. How's that showing solidarity with the Palestinians that you claim to care about? That's the argument against me. My response is, no, this is really important. And Harris is really, really bad on Palestine. She's just as bad. But the people who put pronouns are the ones who care so deeply, right? They're the ones who hate Trump so much. They're the ones who are in tears. I saw this all the time. The super woke crowd are the ones who are most upset about Trump. And they're also the ones saying, at least at this meeting, they want to have a working class coalition. Well, if that's what you want, you're making it much more difficult when you ask people to put pronouns, when you tell people to put down their pronouns. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. All right, just monitoring the chat, not seeing really anything in there that totally grabbed my attention. I will, at the end, I'm going to end the program just going over a few of the appointments by Trump, specifically, or the nominations, Stefanik and Rubio, and my reaction to those. And I'd also, if you want to call in at any point and give those, I'd love to hear from you. Again, what I really would like, if you want to give me what I want, would Chris Van Hollen, is he a Democrat of the future? So I posted this a couple days ago to those who insisted that Harris would reign in Israel once she was elected. Now that the election's over, why isn't she working publicly to stop all arms shipments to the genocidal Jewish state? Or at least why hasn't she called on Biden to do so? She'll be out of office and out of power. Once she leaves office, once Biden leaves office, they're done, right? They have nothing. We know when W left office in 2008, He signed a flurry of executive orders. Now, a lot of them were rescinded or revoked by Obama, and he didn't enforce a lot of them. But stopping arms shipments now and for the next 2 months would make it harder for Israel to keep killing. It also would take a little bit of an issue out of Trump. Trump's positioned himself as the anti-war candidate. He got more Palestinian votes than Jill Stein, and both got many more than Harris. So there is a little tiny bit of influence maybe that they would have over Trump, especially because he's such a narcissist. And if you stroke him, if you say you'll do what he wants, if you give him props, he will maybe do what you want. So this is a way where Harris Biden could make a difference. So I ask, why haven't they? Now, we may get an announcement today because 30 days ago, Biden said he was giving Israel 30 days to get its act together. That was on October 12th. Today is November 12th. Let's see if we see something. I'll be pleasantly surprised if there's any policy change. Here are the responses. So I asked this question. Why isn't Harris doing something? Why hasn't Biden done something? To those of you who say they would, that they're better, well, they can prove it now. There's no political cost to doing so. So here's some answers that I found very persuasive. Sadly, neither Harris nor Biden cares about Palestinians. That seems obvious. Is there any way to argue that, to dispute it? Obviously, that's true. And then another one, sadly, it's more likely Biden and Harris will escalate than end the war. America is not known for their peacemaker or peacekeeping efforts, quite the opposite. So, spot on comments. I totally agree with those. Then there were those who I think completely missed the boat. So here's one. Hal, I think your plea is misdirected. It should be directed to you, to your man, Trump, and his soon-to-be Secretary of State, Rubio, who's chummy with Netanyahu. Have him call Bibi and ask him to stop his genocidal Jewish state from killing Palestinians. So, my man, you want Trump, you know he's pro-Israel, you got him. Okay. This is such an odd comment. First of all, Trump has called, right? And I respond. Trump has called Netanyahu. We don't quite know what he said. Trump isn't in power. He hasn't had power. The people who would respond when I would call out Harris would always say to me, she's not the president. She doesn't have any power. Why are you complaining about what she has or hasn't done? Now, we know that's a very disingenuous defense. She herself said repeatedly she had power, and she also said she would never change. She wasn't going to change anything that Biden did. So that's just an absurd defense. But if that is your defense, if your defense is, well, the vice president can't do anything, so that's why you can't blame her for what Israel's doing, how can you possibly argue that Trump should be doing something when he's still, he's just the president-elect? He has no power. Rubio, as he says, is not Secretary of State. But yeah, Trump has called Netanyahu, and I hope what he said is stop with the killing. And that's exactly what I say. And then I cite to this EU article where there's a quote in there. Trump's not going to give Netanyahu a blank check. So who knows? I'm not particularly sanguine. I don't think that the nominations so far, or the Trump's announced, his potential cabinet nominations are good. I'm not hopeful. We had a call yesterday, Emogi, saying that Pompeo, pointing out that Pompeo and Haley were not going to be part of the new administration. And I think as far as that goes, that's pretty good. They're both neocons. They're both associated with forward use, projection of American power, which I think is terrible and something that Trump has, to a degree, sworn off. So that's good. But Elise Stefanik is a terrible choice. It's hard to imagine anyone worse. This is one of the most bellicose, most, out of control, the most nasty rhetoric spewing people there is in Congress. And that's quite a bar to be, to be over, right? When we look at some of the people in Congress, like people like the Debbie Wasserman Schultzes of this world, And for Stefanik and the Virginia Foxes of this world, for Stefanik to comfortably clear them as one of the most, mean-spirited people really is a feat that she's managed, and to be in charge, to be the UN ambassador is far worse. Yes, far worse than Nikki Haley. That's what relatives sent to me. Yeah, I don't like Haley. Stefanik's worse. I agree with that. And in terms of a peacemaker or someone who's going to try to broker some kind of agreement between Israel and Palestine, not going to happen with her. She was the one who called out all those college presidents for allegedly being too soft on the pro-Palestine protesters. So that's a terrible choice. Rubio may be a little bit more mixed. Before we get to that, let me just finish off with the comments in response to my question, which is on the table. Why hasn't Harris Biden stopped the shipments of arms? They're really, as some of you claim, if they're really the ones who we could rely on to end the killing, why haven't they? Why haven't they done it yet? And the answer is because they're not. That's not who they are. They're not pro-Palestine. They're not pro-peace. At least in this issue, there doesn't appear to be any daylight between them and Trump. So here's another comment. Why don't you criticize Trump for not putting an immediate end to the violence? And again, this was another commenter, because he's not president, right? He's not president. Harris, Biden are president, vice president. That's why. But I do criticize Trump to the extent that he hasn't called on Netanyahu now to stop the killing. But yeah, he called Bibi and he said, and then my question, which no one's answered, since Biden, Harris are still in charge, or at least not the people who think it's on Trump, since Biden and Harris are still in charge and actually could stop the murders, why don't they? Why haven't they? Why do you think? And because that's not who they are. All right, real quick, 240-242-5646. We're close to the end of the hour, and I will go over an hour if someone calls. If there's some comment that I want to feature or highlight, I will. Otherwise, we'll be going pretty soon. Love all the chat. I talked a little bit about this. Don't know what else to say. I think this is a bad sign. I'm not happy about it. It's not just her demeanor, which is incredibly unambassadorial. Just the opposite, in fact. It's her policies. Totally pro-Israel, total Zionist. By the way, Stefanik, not Jewish. I thought she was. She's from New York State, where there's a large Jewish population, though not the city or the suburbs. She is from upstate New York. She's not Jewish at all, but she's completely tied herself to Israel. As has Richie Torres, a Bronx Democrat who is not Jewish. So this is a bad sign. I'm not happy about it. I think it's terrible. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, bad sign. John Fetterman will vote for Rubio. Fetterman, one of the most pro-Israel, the most Zionist of the Democrats. So he likes Rubio. That's a bad sign. There's some mixed signals from Marco Rubio. I don't want to say it's all problematic with Rubio. There's some, you want to look at the tea leaves, maybe he won't be as bad as I fear. And so here's Adam Kinzinger, another Republican. Rubio has been obviously kind of changing. I think he even voted against Ukraine aid. That's true. He did. And I give him props for that. That's really good. So maybe, just maybe, even if we don't get an end to the genocide, which is horrific, maybe the Ukraine war at least will wind down with Trump in office, and that would be a positive. So there's that. And there's also comment here from the Forward, the Jewish Daily Forward, about Rubio. He surprised former. This is why I said maybe, just maybe, Rubio won't be as evil as we fear. Rubio surprised former supporters and donors meaning his supporters and donors. Remember, he's from Florida. It's a pretty good-sized and wealthy Jewish population in the Miami area and the Gold Coast there as you move up towards Palm Beach. He surprised former supporters and donors with an April vote, that's April 24 this year, against emergency funding for Israel. That's damn good. Every Democrat voted for that. Rubio argued that the foreign aid should have included border enforcement measures, that's bad, and objected to its linkage with aid for Ukraine and Taiwan. I agree with there shouldn't have been any linkage with aid for Ukraine. Taiwan's a tough issue. I want us to protect Taiwan from Russia, and I think Trump may also. Taiwan from China. Taiwan is democratic. It's established. I would hate to see it swallowed up by China. All right, 240-242-5646. Hal, other than social media, do you have a website? So I, for years and years, posted at halginsburg.com. I recently just deprecated that. I still own the URL, but I'm no longer posting there. It's no longer even up. That was just a decision that I just don't have the bandwidth and, frankly, maybe the interest in posting there as much as I used to. It's tough. It's just a lot of work to write articles, and I wasn't getting a lot of hits. I got some, just like I get some hits on this program, but I decided I was going to focus more on doing Halitics. Also, the individual websites aren't where people are. I think they're much more so now, like on Substack. So yeah, your best bet, YouTube, Halitics on Facebook. That's where you can find me. All right. And so, yeah, he voted at least in April against more aid for Israel. So that's Rubio, the nominee, the announced preferred nominee for Secretary of State. But the forward, maybe they are slightly concerned that he voted against aid for Israel in one package, which, obviously gives me slight hope. But the forward saying no, but he's a vocal supporter of Israel. And he's visited Israel, and he had a bipartisan screening for members of Congress of some film. So he is, he's not good. It's a bad choice. In a video posted by Code Pink, Rubio said he expected Israel to destroy every element of Hamas. So he's bad. He's really bad. Stefanik is really bad. Is Rubio worse than Antony Blinken? I'm not prepared to say that. Will the practical results of an Elise Stefanik in the as ambassador be worse than what we've seen under the Biden White House, which is consistently vetoing any bills that condemn Israel, that criticize Israel, that call for Israel to withdraw? No. I mean, the Biden administration has done everything possible to protect Israel in the UN. So I guess what you're seeing is probably no change comes to Israeli-American relations. Israel wags the dog. Israel makes the call. Now, the slight, again, one possible argument against that theory is what the Politico reported. And there's a quote I highlight in here. This is Politico EU, but it's also in regular Politico. Israel wants to destroy Iran, the current government of Iran. Israel wants to completely hollow out Iran. Because Iran does support Hezbollah, Iran provides some support for Hamas. Iran supports the Houthis. And it's all understandable. I don't blame Iran for doing any of that. I think Iran's support for those groups is far more defensible than the U.S. support for Israel. But Israel obviously sees it differently, and they want to, I guess they want a nuclear war with Iran. And so far to date, that's one area where Biden has been a little bit firm, apparently, with Israel. Not sure how firm, but somewhat firm. According to Politico, Trump may take the same position. No, you can't start bombing nuclear facilities in Tehran. No, you can't start a Air Force carpet bombing campaign against Iran. That's what Politico EU is saying. Trump is no fan of Bibi, but they say Trump's not going to give him a black check if that's what he wants or expects. I think he's going to be disappointed because Trump wants to end the fighting in the Middle East almost as much as he does in Ukraine. So that highlighted segment gives me a little bit of hope. Trump did say, and I've made this, I've quoted it a number of times. He said at that town hall, I want people not to die. When he was asked about whether he wanted Ukraine to win the war against Russia, whatever the hell that means. His answer was, I want people not to. What it means is driving Russia, I guess, completely out of Ukraine. That seems like it's not going to happen without many, many millions more. Trump understands that. He says, I want people not to die. So when I read in Politico that a Washington lobbyist, I have no idea who it is, I don't know how credible they are, all I can go by is what I read. When I read that a lobbyist is saying Trump wants to end the fighting in the Middle East almost as much as he does in Ukraine, I'm cautiously, slightly less pessimistic, less hopeless than I would otherwise be. All right, that is going to do it for today's program. I appreciate all the commenters. I appreciate the call. I'll be back tomorrow. We are efforting a few guests. Got a couple people I've reached out to and who have reached back to me actually asking if they can be on the program. So we'll see. I don't have anyone scheduled for the next few days on Halitics, but we're hopeful that we'll have some guests. Otherwise, I'm happy to I love doing the program without guests just as much. See you tomorrow.